Breaking news tonight, Colorado mom Suzanne Morphew goes missing on Mother's Day, seemingly torn off her mountain bike to vanish into thin air. But then her body found in a shallow grave miles away. In the last hours, Suzanne Morphew's autopsy released. Not only was Suzanne murdered, she was shot full of animal tranquilizers before her death. Just what does the deadly drug cocktail extracted from her bones reveal? Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you. I want you back so bad.
Right. Okay. Whoever took her shot her full of animal tranquilizers before they killed her. I mean, powerful animal tranquilizers. We've got an all-star panel to make sense of what we know, but listen to this. Butorphanol, Azaperone, medetomidine. They first identified her through her dental records and the port she had on her body. She was in remission for cancer. Then later DNA extracted from her knee. I'm curious, was she wearing the clothes that the medical examiner got already in bags? Could we even tell? Were her bones so in a state of decomp and completely skeletonized that she was out of her clothes? What more are we learning from this deadly drug cocktail? And according to experts in the Colorado region, hunters do not hunt with animal tranquilizers. But guess who does use them? Barry Morphew. He says he uses animal tranquilizers to shoot deer to get their antlers off of them, and that he may have been using them to shoot chipmunks. Wow, what a coinky-dink, because now his wife's body turns up, what's left of it, full of animal tranquilizers. But that's a whole nother can of worms. Don't worry, I'm going to open it in just a few moments. Joining me, high-profile investigative journalist Lauren Scharf. And you can find her at Lauren Scharf TV. Lauren, thank you for being with us on the story from the very beginning. I want to talk about how her body was found and what the autopsy revealed that was just released in the last hours. Let's start with the autopsy.
Yeah, so they were just skeletal bones. There was no actual tissue on the bones. It was scattered in Moffett, Colorado, which is a desert area in Saguache County. And there was also a lot of clothing that was also found. A padded bra, a ripped dark blue gray hooded sweatshirt, a Nike tank top, Yeti shorts, fabric fragments. There was a baklava, pink and light colored leather work gloves. So there were other items besides skeletal remains that were there. No shoes were found.
Yeah, Lauren, I'm glad you mentioned that. Oh, no shoes. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I'm very intrigued by the balaclava that was found. One of the head face coverings that we often see, like on TV, terrorists are always wearing them, where the only thing you see are their eyes, everything else is covered, and they typically come down over the neck and shoulders. A pale patterned balaclava, a pink and light color leather work glove, a light color partial padded bra, a ripped dark blue gray hooded sweatshirt labeled Crested Butte, a torn green Nike tank top, Yeti shorts, and a fabric fragment. What can we deduce? All of the clothing and fabric fragment weathered and covered in dirt. very curious. Joining me, as I said, an all-star panel to make sense of what we are learning. You're seeing shots of Suzanne Morphew in life, and she seems very happy with her husband and 2 adult daughters, but all was not as it seems. Trouble was brewing within the marriage. But before I get to that, I want to focus on these meds, these tranquilizers in her system. And joining me is a renowned death investigator, Joseph Scott Morgan, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, the author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, and star of a new hit series, Body Bags with Joe Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, in a nutshell, because also joining me, Joe Scott, is a very dear friend of Suzanne Morphew's. You know, hold on. I see Cheryl McCollum has popped up, Joe Scott. Cheryl, in honor of Suzanne Morphew, I'm wearing my Justice for Suzanne t-shirt that you and I got when we were out investigating and beating the bushes and trying to find answers in Suzanne's murder. Are you at all surprised her body was shot full of animal trank?
Not at all. I think it was exactly what he said. He told people, I've got the dart gun, I've got chemicals that I've gotten rid of, I've got needles, I've got a cap that they found in the dryer. He basically said it. He also told everybody that he was running around the house hunting. That could be leakage. He has invoked this entire narrative, and right down to her having clothing on, right? That is not bedclothes, by the way. And he said that's how we left her. It makes complete sense to me that this was going to be the result from her bone marrow.
Okay, Cheryl McCollum and I tromped through, I can't even tell you about the terrain that we, I can't call it hiking because it was slow going, looking in so many spots, hoping for the discovery of her body. And the discovery was made many miles from home in a shallow grave. Joe Scott Morgan, back to you. Joe Scott, another thing in this autopsy report is, quote, one weathered bullet. See, I've got so many questions, Joe Scott. Was the bullet in the shallow grave? Were the bones in the shallow grave? Were they scattered? Were the clothes still on the bones? 6 envelopes containing 5 fabric fragments. What's that? Okay, jump in.
Yeah, and we have to understand if you look at the autopsy report, Nancy, this is something fascinating, is that this was not just a one-day event where they collected everything and put it in a single bag. These bags are actually annotated to demonstrate that 2 of them had been collected same day, labeled day 1 twice, and then you have day 2 and day 3 where they go out and they collect more remains. So that gives you the understanding that these remains are shallow and that they're probably scattered about. They even had some commingling apparently with animal skeletal remains out there as well, which is kind of an Herculean task on the part of the anthropologist to delineate between these 2 items. So it can be very confusing out there. And then to top it all off, you have this weathered projectile that's out there. I don't know, and this is going to be fascinating to see as this plays out because we don't have all of the reports. What does the ballistic examination say about that round? What kind of weapon platform is it associated with? Is it a 22 caliber or is it a 7.62? We have no idea. And also one more thing, Nancy, is that we don't have any indication that a shell casing, the spent shell casing, was recovered, and that could be a big clue. So yeah, lots of evidence recovered out there, not to mention the clothing, and there's still more analysis, I think, to be done at this point in time.
A lot of analysis. And back to you, Cheryl McCollum, joining us, founder, director, Cold Case Research Institute. You can find her at coldcasecrimes.org, hit podcast Zone 7, and forensics expert. Cheryl, I've been poring over this autopsy report. They didn't give us much, but they gave me enough. Just hold on. 2 and 2 still equals 4, right? Or is everything completely upside down? Because didn't Barry Morphew say he was using an animal trank gun at the time of her death? around the time she went missing. These photos from Daily Mail.
And Nancy, here's the thing, they're not giving us a lot. That's the right call. They're not going to tell us the caliber. They're not going to tell us exactly the shape and condition of that projectile. There was also one found in the bedroom on her side of the bed on the floor. So do those two projectiles match? They're not going to disclose that yet. They're playing it close to the vest, which is what they should do, so that when
Hey,
they go.
can we just agree right now to stop saying projectile? Okay.
Okay.
If you're talking about a bullet, say bullet. You're talking about a shell, say shell. If you're talking about a trank, leftovers of a trank bullet, say it. Okay? Now, rephrase that in regular people talk. Cheryl, this goes for you too, Joe Scott Morgan. Go ahead, Cheryl.
So there's two bullets, one that was found with her at the disposal site and one found in the bedroom. We don't know if they match. And again, they shouldn't tell us that yet. They've got people to interview. So when they go and they say, hey, we found a bullet, is the person going to say, was it a 22? And again, go back to Barry's original statement when he got out of the truck after he was told she was missing, and he gets home and they say, hey, we found her bike down this ravine. First thing he says was, you think a mountain lion got her? He's the one that keeps referring to large animals. He's the one that's using a tranquilizer for large animals. I mean, it's just an unbelievable story.
You're absolutely right, Cheryl McCollum. Listen.
Go down there.
Was it a crash?
I mean, the bike looked, the way it was laying, it kind of looked like it, but there's not really that much damage to the bike. That's the thing.
Lion?
Yeah, it was just like
Was
lying.
it no lion? Mountain lion?
I didn't see anything that would
I didn't see
indicate,
anything, and they're not letting us go over the site
because we're getting a track
dogs. They're bringing dogs.
just right down.
Did anybody look for foot tracks on the road?
I haven't seen anything really, but
Like people tracks? Were lion?
I didn't really notice, but I won't lie, I'm not like an expert tracker or something, you know.
A mountain lion. My rear end, a mountain lion. You know, I could watch that body cam video all day long. And then some. Barry Morphew, Suzanne's husband, jumps up and says, a mountain lion? Puts that out there. Now, just one quick review. Joe Scott Morgan, tell me again about the animal tranquilizer evidence found in Suzanne's home. What was found? Of course, this may be after a cleanup, but again, Barry Morphew is not a suspect, and he has not been named again for murder. Okay, tell me, Joe Scott.
Yeah, what we're thinking about here, Nancy, is this is a very lethal cocktail, and that's the way I like to frame it. This BAM, I think it's referred to as this deer tranquilizer, essentially, that's being used. You've got three components here, Nancy, and you'd mentioned them off the top, and if you'll just permit me, I'll go through them very, very quickly. With the butorphanol, that's actually an opiate-based drug. Okay, so you think about a synthetic heroin-like, morphine-like drug that kind of induces sleepiness. It also impedes your breathing. And then you go to the Azaperone, which is interesting term here. It's a serenic, which means like based in serenity. You think about people that take Valium or any other kind of benzo, it's going to calm you down. It's actually used with hogs. The fact that they extracted this from the head of her femur is damning evidence, Nancy.
Joining me as a special guest, Tish Leeway, close friend of Suzanne Morphew's. Tish, thank you for being with us.
Hi.
Tish, got a question for you. When you heard the autopsy results, what went through your mind?
Honestly, I was thinking that that's how it was going to come back anyway. Um, from probably, I don't know, a couple months ago, right after they found her, I said, I have a feeling that the autopsy is going to come back and she was tranquilized. I have my own theories of how it went down, but it didn't surprise me, to be honest. The only thing that surprised me is that they found something after 3 years.
Tish, got a question for you. Again, Barry Morphew was charged in Suzanne's murder. Those charges were dropped. He is, at this moment, no longer a suspect, no longer a person of interest. The state asked for the charges to be dropped when they were accused of not handing over exculpatory or evidence that would prove innocence information to the defense. The state asked for the charges to be dropped, and that was done. They may be refiled as of right now, tonight. Barry Morphew is not named as a person of interest or suspect in Suzanne Morphew's murder. Tish, you stated that you had your own theories. You are a very close friend, were a very close friend of Suzanne Morphew's. What's your theory of, as you say, how it went down?
This is what I've always said. I think he arrived at 2:45. I think she was in the backyard, may have saw her on the phone with Jeff Libler. And I think that's where he shot her with a tranquilizer gun. I think she got up. I think she ran. Um, I think that that's all that pinging was, her running and him chasing her. I think she ran up to Mallory's room, and I think that's where he shot her again with the tranquilizer gun, and I think that's where the dart cap fell, and I think she was there for, however long until he was to put her body where he put her. But I think that's why those sheets and the cap gun, I think he was just in a hurry, trying to, and didn't notice the dart cap that they found in the dryer. I mean, why would they find Mallory's sheets in the dryer when she was in college?
That's a really good point, Tish Leeway, friend of Suzanne Morphew's, because I have certain sheets that I put on Lucy's bed because they match her bedspread that she picked out, and certain pillowcases she likes. Same thing with my son, his are blue. Same thing with my mom because her bed is a different size. So that's a really good point. Why would the adult daughter, Mallory's sheets, nobody else's, it's not like it was a cleaning day for Suzanne Morphew, why would her sheets alone be in the washer dryer? I haven't heard a single soul bring that up. Now, you know what else would be interesting to find out, Tish, is if Mallory's bed, say, was a double or a queen, and Suzanne's bed was a king. Hypothetically speaking, I'd be very curious to find that out. But you say it was they were Mallory's sheets, right?
I'm pretty sure that's what was said. But that's been my theory all along, that he, as soon as he got home, I think she passed on Saturday.
Yes. When you say that he came home, to whom are you referring?
When Barry came home.
Did you know that Suzanne Morphew, did you ever get information Suzanne Morphew had gone to a battered women's center for group therapy?
I did get information after she had went missing from some people that were going to the same center.
So another lady in the group told you she had been going?
Yes.
Okay, I know the lady. I'm not going to reveal that here. That's a whole nother can of worms. Okay, let me understand something. To Chris McDonough joining me, who has been on the investigation along with Cheryl and myself. Chris, thank you for being with us. Chris is the director at the Cold Case Foundation, former homicide detective, has investigated over 300 homicides, and the host on YouTube of The Interview Room, where I first met him. Chris, thank you for joining us again with this very disturbing update on Suzanne Morphew's autopsy results. There's so much to glean from the 3 pages that we have obtained. And hey, one of those pages is just the listing of 5 different doctors. You don't normally see that, do you, Joe Scott? 5 different medical professionals weigh in on this. Usually there's one name scribbled at the bottom. Man, they did it all. Hold on, 4 pages. And one is, I noted, 5 different experts weighing in. But they had to bring in a forensic dentist. I don't know if that's one of these. They had to bring in a toxicologist because of all the drugs. And I believe I've mastered their names. Butorphanol, Azaperone, and medetomidine, I think, but I'm just going to refer to it as the animal tranks. So, Chris McDonough, could we just, and everybody on the panel, again, we're not having high tea at Windsor Castle with Charles and Camilla. So, jump in for Pete's sake. We've got 1 hour to cover a major event in the law and in criminal justice and to getting justice for Suzanne. That's what this t-shirt says. And for me, it ain't just a t-shirt. It's not just a slogan. I want it. I want it. Again, Barry Morphew is not a suspect. So, Chris McDonough, add it up for me.
Well, there's a couple of really interesting things going on here, Nancy. One is the perimortem trauma. There's no indication of that. What that means is there's no indication that the bones at their soft, when they're the softest, i.e. you're alive, that there's any trauma to the bones. So that's the first thing. And when the bullet is found, we have to ask ourselves, well, that means we may have to exclude some type of weapon, i.e. a sharp instrument and or even a gun. The second piece here is if this couldn't get any more sinister, is we have to look at the fact that she has a medical port still on her body and found in that grave. So for me, as from an investigative position, my first thought was, did he inject directly into that medical port? And what Doc Morgan was talking about, that would give the type of density necessary to find it, 4 years later in, the bones themselves.
I want to give you a little brief recap of what we've done since we received the call of Suzanne's disappearance on Sunday. We've, in the area and in the general area, we've run foot searches using air support, canine support, swift water support, and we've also utilized countless hours of drone searches. We've used well over 200 personnel and over 2,000 man hours have gone into this search, but unfortunately we haven't found Suzanne yet, and as I stated before, that is our top priority.
You are hearing the Chaffee County Sheriff. Cheryl McCollum, do you remember when we were out there last investigating and there was still snow on the ground and we stood there not too far from where Barry Morphew was then living and just looked around at that terrain covered in snow, covered in ice, and we thought, how in the HELL are we gonna ever find Suzanne?
And for everybody to understand, you take an airplane to Colorado and then you take a smaller airplane, then you drive several hours. I mean, you're in the middle of the most gorgeous scenery, but you're in the middle of nowhere. And there was so much terrain. There's mountains and creeks and just the snowbanks. I know at one point, several people were standing there, and on the other side, you couldn't have seen them. I mean, the snowbanks were that high; they were almost 7 feet, and there was so much land wide open, not a building on it, not a house anywhere near, that you could have, in the cover of darkness or in broad daylight, could have disposed of her body without being seen.
You know what? Let me just stop you right there. How is everybody on this panel so calm? There are way too many coincidences for me. Okay, number one, Barry Morphew, happens to conjure up an out-of-town, let me see the guest, please, an out-of-town trip the morning, on Mother's Day, that Suzanne Morphew goes missing, claiming he last saw her at early in the morning, asleep in bed. Okay, leaving on Mother's
His
Day.
daughters are
None of
also
the
gone, right?
on the one. Thank you, Lauren Sharf. The one time the daughters are away camping, nobody even knows she's missing until they try to call her on Mother's Day. So she's talking to her boyfriend on the phone. Oh, which reminds me, to Tish Leeway, you're a stylist, did you do the hair of Barry Morphew's girlfriend?
No, but I did meet her in October of 2020 when she came in to start tanning in the salon that I had worked at. Her and actually Macy and Mallory both, they all came in about a week within each other. It was, yeah, it was very bizarre. They were getting ready to go on that trip to in January to Mexico.
Okay, well, wait. So you did the girlfriend's hair October 2020, and Suzanne had gone missing May 2020. Is that right? Is that what you said?
No, so she went missing May of 2020, but the girlfriend came in to the tanning salon to start tanning in October of 2020,
Right.
which was right about a week to 2 weeks after Mallory and Macy had started coming in to tan again. And they were getting ready to go to Mexico for their annual trip that I guess they went to every year, is my
Did the
understanding.
girlfriend go on the trip?
I'm not sure. It was a weird coincidence that she came in right after they started tanning. I had
I'm
never
concerned
met
about
her
another
before.
coincidence, and that is in 6 months after Suzanne is still missing, body not found, he's already got a girlfriend? That's a yes, no. Did he already have a girlfriend to your knowledge within 6
Well,
months?
she said that, so when I first met her, we had kind of heard this name that was out there. So when she came into the tanning salon, we knew exactly who she was. The first couple times she came in, she didn't really talk much about anything. Well,
Let me just
the
cut the
the
chase for you. Was she
Yeah.
wearing some of Suzanne's jewelry?
well, yeah, it was
Okay.
seen that it
Don't need to
looked
say
like
anything
her
else.
ring. Yep.
Yeah, okay. That said, as I was saying earlier, how is everybody on the panel so calm with all the coincidences? You have him coming
Yeah.
home. She's on the phone with her boyfriend. She says to the boyfriend, "Oh, my stars, Barry's here. Gotta go." Bam, she goes missing. He has a
Yeah.
hastily thrown together work trip out of town on Mother's Day. Again, my rear end, leaving for a hastily thrown together work trip out of town on Mother's Day. He calls back, but when he can't get her on the phone, when the daughters can't find her, and has somebody else call 911, she's full of animal trank. And oh, yeah, right before she went missing, I was shooting an animal trank gun, darts, and they were actually found in the home. And there's a bullet by her bed. How did that get there? The Easter Bunny just throws it by her bed? What? The woman's bones are scattered. She was murdered. I mean, help me out, people. Am I the only one
Yeah.
seeing all these coincidences? Who is that? Is that, jump in for Pete's sake, Chris McDonough?
Yeah, Nancy, I mean, think about it, right? I mean, you're right on target here. I mean, what a coincidence that this guy used to own a deer farm and he used to harvest deer antlers by utilizing the same exact chemicals that are found inside of her body. And to your what you said a moment ago, a month before, when he's asked by the FBI, "Hey, have you ever used this stuff?" He says, "Oh yeah, all the time. I'm very proficient in it." To the point where he, tells them even a little bit deeper of how he does it. And that's why it's really interesting. Does he hit her with a dart, hypothetically, that night, the day she disappeared? And then now that he has that port from her cancer treatments on her body, does he utilize that as a mechanism to go even further with his plot if he's the guy, right? And so I'm with you on this 100%.
Hey,
It
I've
is
got
not
more.
lining
I've
up
got
correctly.
more. And I welcome everybody on this panel. If you have a thought, Put it out there. Joe Scott Morgan is
Nancy,
uncharacteristically quiet right now. But what about this? His cell phone, thank you, Jackie, his cell phone pings where her helmet is found, far, far away. Oh, I guess the mountain lion threw it out there, where he happened to be looking for what was he looking at? Deer that morning on his hastily thrown together out-of-town trip? His cell phone pings right there. And let me remind everybody, he's the one, Barry Morphew, who is not a suspect. He is the one, at the very beginning, he is the one that says, hey, neighbor, can you go see if her mountain bike's there? Maybe she went for a ride. He might as well have said maybe a mountain lion dragged her off. He's the one that introduces the whole mountain bike ride theory out there. That's where it came from. I mean, Cheryl McCollum, what do I have to do? Hit you over the head?
Nancy, I've got more for you. And this is the thing that has bugged me from day one. They released a video where he is walking law enforcement through the home. They say to him, hey, we need some clothing, maybe for tracking dogs or whatever. He opens the door and lets them in. This is the first time he is entering the home since she goes missing. He ain't looking around for nothing. He's not calling her name. He doesn't say, hey, in case she got hurt on the bike, there was some horrible accident, maybe she's upstairs. There's a drinking glass on the counter. He doesn't refer to it. He doesn't talk about it. He's not checking anything. Let me tell you something, Nancy. If you were to be missing and I go to your house and I notice the guinea pigs have not had their cage cleaned, something happened to you before 6:30 in the morning. The next thing I'm going to look for is Fat Boy. Has he been out? Is he in his crate still asleep? Something happened to you, and even I can pinpoint time. So this to me was critical if you watch him.
Suzanne? Somebody chip you, buddy. Can you try to call the husband and see what type of bike she has?
You are seeing body cam footage of the deputies actually finding Suzanne Morphew's bike out in the wilderness some distance away. How far away was it, Joe Scott Morgan, that her helmet was found? And it is Barry Morphew, not a suspect, the husband, that started the whole line of investigation into the bike. How far away was her helmet found? Do you recall, Joe Scott?
Yeah, we're looking at about a mile, essentially. So how when you think about working, and I came at this, Nancy, initially as, yeah, it could be a bicyclist struck by a vehicle. I've worked a lot of those cases over my career. But if that's the case, how does the helmet wind up so far away from this bicycle? And also, how's the helmet off of the body? These things are meant to protect the head, and they're strapped onto the head. So there are big questions here. And one point further, I've seen big cat attacks from all over the world as in-depth investigation seminars I've been to, this sort of thing. And you know what, the one thing that really stands out to me about this is that when you have a big cat attack, you'll have drag marks, but you know what else you got? You got blood trails, because the way a cat attacks is they dig those teeth in and they rip, and then they carry off. So you will have evidence of that. The fact that he says this from Jump Street has always been puzzling to me, because this is atypical of what a mountain lion would do. Generally, you have to go through under an outcropping or something. They always attack from the rear. And there's nothing like this. You're going to tell me that a mountain lion actually scurried up a bank and waited for a
Joe Scott
bicyclist to
Morgan, there
come
was
by?
no sign of a struggle either, or even a
Yeah,
crash.
nothing.
I knew that
Nothing at all.
initial reports that it seemed staged, at least what detectives
Yep.
said. So like what you were saying, there was no blood anywhere, anything as far as broken limbs of trees and things like that. That wasn't the case in this bike scene.
And you know what's interesting about that location, to Cheryl McCollum? You and I stood at the foot of that embankment, and we're looking up just the way that picture is, and try to imagine how her bike landed there. And we looked and looked and looked. No damage to the bike at all. And it's very curious, is it not, Lauren Scharf, that we learned Morphew told deputies that day that Suzanne Morphew had only recently gained an interest in mountain biking and started riding daily. Hold on, Lauren Scharf. But straight out to Tish Leeway, a friend who Suzanne would come in to tan there. Did she talk about riding her mountain bike daily?
No, no.
Okay. Also curious, Lauren Scharf, Suzanne would have gone on a bike ride around 7:31 p.m. Is that the theory?
I mean, yes, his attorneys are thinking that she was abducted from her bike ride. But as far as all of her patterns of where she goes on her bike ride and when she goes, it didn't line up with the story that a lot of people were hearing about, that she went on a bike ride Mother's Day morning and never came back. That was not the case. She typically went in the afternoons, late afternoons. She typically drove her vehicle to a place to go ride her bike. Her vehicle was still at the house with her camelback that had her water bottle, as well as her purse. Still, we don't know where her cell phone is or if she had earbuds. Usually she would ride her bike with earbuds. And typically she would always take a picture of where she was going on her bike rides. And that's how investigators could figure out what times of days that she would go, where she would go, things like that. And where the bike was seen and where they found the bike is not typically a bike ride that she would go on.
The cell phone data in this case will become very, very critical if the case ever goes to trial. Lauren Scharf joining us, reporter and journalist at Lauren Scharf TV. Lauren, very quickly in a nutshell, the cell phone data is very disturbing. Explain.
When he arrived at home, his cell phone pinged around the house pretty sporadically and pretty quickly. His attorneys claim there's a good map on the screen right now of those pings, but his attorneys claim that there's no way he could have gone through the walls like that. But there's also a like a garage underway where people can walk underneath.
What does it tell you, Joe Scott?
Look, these things are not as exacting as the defense would like to, present. And this idea, Lauren just mentioned just a minute ago off air with him walking through walls and this sort of thing. That's absolutely ludicrous. You've already got this thing narrowed down. He's moving through the house and he's doing it quickly. So if they want exactitude here, I don't know what to tell them, because you're not going to get much tighter than it is right now.
Tish Leeway, Suzanne Morphew's a friend. What do you make of the theory as shown by the cell phone data that she was being chased through the home with the trank gun?
I mean, that's just what I've always believed. When we went to court and saw that data, I always thought that he came home and that's what she was doing. She was running from him to get away from him.
Cheryl McCollum, jump in.
The cell phone shows he's running zigzag all over the yard and the house. He claims he was hunting chipmunks. If anybody has ever seen a little chipmunk run, first of all, they're tiny. They dart and then they hide. They have escape routes all the time. He's also running. He must be a hell of a shot. No way that's possible. It's not even logical.
Chris McDonough, what about it?
Well, it's interesting in the autopsy report, right? And I agree with what Doc and Cheryl and everybody have said here on this panel, that, he's out, allegedly hunting these chipmunks. But here's a problem that he has. At the dump site where Suzanne is found, There are human and non-human bones. I've asked myself if he has this pre-incident behavior of staging, even as this is an example of that. What did he stage at the dump site and the burial site? And now we see these non-human bones that are mentioned in the autopsy report. And my initial thought process was, and I could be, totally wrong here, but he's a hunter. And if you're going to bury a human being and you know that animals are going to come to that gravesite at some point, and I've had many sites like others where they're going to dig up that body. Well, why not place a carcass over the top of that body? And now those animals have a food source. And at some point, they're going to lose interest in that gravesite. And or if it was discovered by a human, they'll go, oh, well, that's just a carcass over there. That's not a problem. So I think that could be a very interesting piece of this puzzle as it unfolds.
Lauren Scharf joining us, investigative journalist on the case. Isn't it true that Barry Morphew, not a suspect, claimed that he had out all of his animal trank paraphernalia and then threw it away right before Suzanne went missing?
Yeah, in April of 2021, when he was asked by investigators about the tranquilizer chemicals, he said he typically keeps them on his workbench in the garage and that he might have thrown them away during his trip to Broomfield the same weekend that Suzanne disappeared. And going back to Chris McDonough's point about carcasses and things like that, I've heard from a lot of people in town in Moffett and Saguache County that area is a dumping ground for such animals like he was describing.
I also find it very curious that a 33-year wildlife officer expert, Renzo Del Piccolo, who retired from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, insists that tranquilizers are not used to hunt animals. They're only used by wildlife officials. Hunting with tranquilizers is illegal. Let's stop and remember American hero Captain Benjamin Moulton, just 27, died in a helicopter crash with 4 other Marines Feb 7, 2024. He obtained the Sharpshooter Award, the National Defense Service Medal. He graduated second in his class from the Officer Candidate School in the Navy. He leaves behind dog Buck, sisters Faustine and Maxine, and loving parents Robin and Steve. American hero, Captain Benjamin Moulton. Thank you to our guests, but especially to you for being with us tonight. Nancy Grace signing off. See you tomorrow night, 6 and 9 o'clock sharp Eastern. And until then, good night, friend. Guys, thank you for watching Crime Online with Nancy Grace here on YouTube. To get the very latest, subscribe to Crime Online here